May the 23rd. I'll start from 2017 and go to 2015. Something should not happen, but they do. Manchester's bombing today, killing some 20 people and wounding scores more, is going to be labelled by the press with a category error. In the Middle East, Islamist terrorism has to be resisted by Islamic authorities. But Islamic authorities are partly to blame for Middle East terror. They feed it and approve it. In the United Kingdom, those authorities do not have the reach to do that. Those feeding and legitimising terror in the United Kingdom tend to be left-wing authorities, like newspapers and political parties like Labour and the Greens, not because they behave that way, but because their rhetoric feeds those that can. Soldier Lee Rigby was murdered by a couple who took lies fed to them from the press, and even the journals like Lancet, and claimed they had committed an act of war in response to a mythical war being fought in the Middle East. In all likelihood, a suicide bomber using a nail bomb will be at the heart of this terrorist tragedy. But someone else will have assembled the device, and others would have primed the bomber. This is not like the Man Monis Lindt siege. This is a deliberate terrorist hit on children, which will be repeated until it is stopped. Across the world, papers will say there was a reason for the attack, but it is terrorism, and there was no reason. Some Christians will claim it is a sign of end times, but they're wrong, as they have been before about other atrocities. Some Muslims will claim it as a win. It isn't. God had nothing to do with the atrocity, but God will one day do something the terrorists and their spoon-feeders do not see or understand. God will one day make this evil act lose its sting. He will give back long, blessed lives to those who have lost it so young. He will heal those maimed. I know this to be true, for what he has done in my life and what I have seen him do in others' lives. But I also know that believers have a duty right now, because God will make things right, but it is in our power to do right too. Prayer is part of what we can do. We can show love by practical help for those suffering, and we can overthrow the leadership that feeds the atrocity. The church leaders who promote terrorist activity, who endorse killing of migrants through reckless abandon of borders, and I mean those of any religion who do such, including so-called Christians. Don't hate Muslims because of the terrorism. Show the terrorists this atrocity is their loss too. On this day, in 844, the Battle of Clavijo, the apostle Saint James the Greater was said to have miraculously appeared to a force of outnumbered Asturians and aided them against the forces of the Emir of Cordoba. The actual battle is fictional, only having references to it after 300 years. After 1430, the siege of Compiègne, Joan of Arc was captured by the Burgundians while leading an army to relieve Campione. The French king had distanced himself from her, and while she was fighting on this day, the French garrison commander lowered the gate so she could not return to safety. She fought bravely before being pulled from her horse and surrendering. 1498, Girolamo Savonarola was burned at the stake in Florence, Italy. People who are close to God should be humble. Girolamo wasn't. He proclaimed special knowledge of end times. Sadly, the special knowledge did not prevent him from being barbecued. In 1533, the marriage of King Henry VIII to Catherine of Aragon was declared null and void. He wouldn't maintain the fiction later. Henry VIII had decided his first wife had married and consummated with his older brother Arthur, who predeceased him. This meant he could marry Anne Boleyn. Henry VIII had broken from the Catholic Church and founded the Anglican Church to do this because his first wife, Catherine, had been able to convince the then Pope to not allow a divorce. Catherine had been a very good wife to Henry VIII and had never deserved her poor treatment, but Anne deserved better than her lot too. In 1568, the Netherlands declared their independence from Spain. Also 1568, the Dutch rebellion, led by Louis of Nassau, defeated Jean de Lien, Duke of Arenberg, and his loyalist troops in the Battle of Heligoland, opening the 80 Years' War, a great victory of the Dutch, but the cost was the loss of a brother of William I of Orange. 1609, official ratification of the Second Charter of Virginia took place. 1618, the Second Defenestration of Prague precipitated the 30 Years' War. Religious freedom was at issue at both defenestrations. The first, in 1419, had been when the town was overrun and several senior lawmakers and judges were thrown to their deaths through windows. The weak king had died soon after. In 1618, Protestants had 3 Catholic leaders to be thrown from the 3rd-story window, falling 21 meters and surviving. Some said after they were saved by dung. Others said they were saved by angels. Evidence suggests the former more likely. 1701, after being convicted of piracy and murdering William Moore, Captain William Kidd was hanged in London, England. Kidd appears to have been a loyal English subject, and his hanging seems unjust. William Moore would probably disagree. 1844, Declaration of the Bab. The evening before the 23rd, a merchant of Shiraz announced that he was a prophet and founded a religious movement that would later be brutally crushed by the Persian government. He was considered to be a forerunner of the Baha'i faith, and Baha'i is celebrated the day as a holy day. 1948, Thomas C. Wasson, the U.S. Consul General, was assassinated in Jerusalem, Israel. He had tried to stop Arabs shelling the area shortly before an Arab sniper apparently shot him. 1992, Italy's most prominent anti-mafia judge, Giovanni Falcone, his wife and 3 bodyguards were killed by the Corleone clan with a half-ton bomb near Capaci, Sicily. His friend and colleague, Paolo Borsellino, would be assassinated less than 2 months later, making 1992 a turning point in the history of the Italian mafia prosecutions.